Central Delhi is a landscape of high-security gates and pristine architecture, home to diplomatic enclaves and the Indian government at Raisina Hill. But right beside these foreign embassies, the manicured lawns end abruptly at the edge of a dense, uninviting forest. Deep within this thicket sits a dilapidated 13th-century ruin. For decades, the only sign of life here was a rusted iron gate and a warning that trespassers would be shot. This is Malcha Mahal. It is widely cited as Delhi's most haunted location, a place where locals believe the air is heavy with the spirits of journalists and hikers who never returned from the woods. When investigators finally breached the grounds, they found no evidence of a haunting. They found 3 people living in total squalor, surrounded by bats and snakes. The inhabitants were the direct descendants of Nawab Wajid Ali Shah, the final ruler of the Oudh dynasty. The family consisted of Begum Wilayat Mahal and her 2 children, Princess Sakina and Prince Riaz. They believed their royal lineage entitled them to the estates of their ancestors, and they refused to live like commoners in a modern city. Their presence in this forest was the end result of a process that began in 1856, when the British East India Company seized their kingdom and forced the royal family into exile. This move into the ruins was the final stage of a decline that had been accelerating for over a century. The family's situation became desperate after 1971, when the Indian government stopped paying royal allowances, leaving them without an income or a home. The Begum responded by occupying a VIP platform at the New Delhi railway station. She stayed there for 9 long years. To prevent eviction, she surrounded her family with a pack of 11 aggressive Doberman dogs that lunged at any official who approached. If the dogs didn't work, she used a more extreme threat. She claimed she would drink snake venom and die on the platform if they were touched. The protest became an international spectacle, eventually forcing Prime Minister Indira Gandhi to find a way to move the family out of the public eye. Eventually, the government gave them Malcha Mahal. They had traded their public protest for a private existence in a crumbling hunting lodge. The family soon realized their new home was a ruin. The lodge had no doors, it had no electricity, and no running water. They lived in total isolation, sharing the decaying stone rooms with bats and lizards. On September 10, 1993, the conditions became too much for the matriarch. Begum Wilayat Mahal committed suicide at the age of 62. Her children left her body on her study desk for 10 days, mourning in the dark while the house continued to rot around them. The Begum's death didn't end their struggle. It trapped her children in a state of permanent mourning and paranoia. But their isolation was broken by rumors. People in Delhi began to whisper that the ruins contained a hidden oudh treasure. On June 24, 1994, treasure hunters broke into the palace, looking for gold. The siblings were terrified. Their greatest fear was that these looters would dig up their mother's grave to search for phantom riches. To prevent the grave from being desecrated, they dug up their mother's body themselves and protected her by burning it. The siblings didn't burn their mother's remains because of a haunting. They did it because of the treasure hunters at the gate, a final act of desperation that severed their last link to the world outside. In the following decades, they only left the ruins to buy basic supplies. They covered their faces and paid for food by selling off their remaining royal silver. While they hid from their neighbors, they continued to speak to the world, granting interviews to the BBC and the New York Times. In one interview, Princess Sakina described their existence plainly. They had become a family of living corpses. When asked why they didn't simply find a way to work and live in the city, Sakina explained that for them, being ordinary was a sin. They lived in total poverty, but they lived as royalty. Their refusal to be ordinary kept them inside the stone walls more effectively than any iron gate. Prince Riaz spent his final years riding a rusty bicycle through a city that had long since moved on from the 19th century. Inside the ruin, nothing changed. Their mother's dancing shoes remained on the table, and her portrait still hung on the crumbling walls. Sakina eventually asked a reporter for a loaded weapon, wanting to follow her mother's path to keep the royal tradition intact. The British dismantled the Oudh Empire in 1856, but the family's own adherence to royal pride ensured they never moved beyond it. Malcha Mahal remains in the forest today, a physical record of what happens when the past is allowed to swallow the present.